Harvest Moon Super Nintendo. I was relieved to find out that it was still on my Wii. I thought for sure I had eventually deleted considering that I abandoned it for so long because there's no way to avoid typhoons and blizzards in this game. The only way you can save is to agree to write in the diary before going to bed, and you have no other option than going to bed right after saving. I'm going to make a bold statement here. This game is inferior to Harvest Moon 1 Game Boy Color in almost every way. While it's nice that you can marry a girl from the town and have her stand around as a pretty decoration in your house doing nothing, and the graphics are certainly prettier, that's all there is better, and I'll explain why. It sucks that on the first day of the game, the shipper won't let you leave town until you talk to 6 people. When I first revisited this game and got past the boring cutscene at the start, I was stunned to see that this was almost the exact same level design for the farm as in the GBC game. The only difference I noticed in this overly gigantic farm was that there was a well in the corner of the part of the field closest to my farm. That well's in a place where I would rather have crops and always do in the GBC game. It'd be better if the well was in a place where you weren't able to grow crops. I immediately wish this game had an option to relocate the well to anywhere you wanted, but otherwise the game seems to look nicer than the GBC game. I was stunned that even the soundtrack was the same, and just done SNES instruments, so you can see what they're actually going for with the GBC music. I honestly find the GBC music a lot more charming though because it's in 8-bit. Even the tool shed looks almost the same. The difference though is that there isn't a convenient list on the northwestern corner of it telling you exactly how many of every seed you have. And there's a paintbrush as a tool, but obviously it must suck because my house wasn't colored black at any point. Why in the world would they give you paint as a tool but not let you give the house any color you want? What a wasted opportunity. When I went to the left to exit my farm, I saw a tiny screen consisting of nothing but a path crossroading so that it led north and west. This is exactly the same level design that's ripped off in Harvest Moon 2 GBC that led to the town. It immediately reminded me of my complaint with that. All this little level design does is waste my time going through it in a time management based game. While it does look visually better and is more immersive to have you walk around an actual town, this game is based around time management. Time is wasted as you walk around the town doing nothing but waiting until you get to the next building. I honestly vastly prefer how GBC did it, where you go into a menu with a charming 8-bit version of the town music and you can choose all the shops in the town that matter really quickly. The first store I revisited for this review was the Seed Store, which is run by Nina's mother instead of Nina herself in this game, and this is nostalgic to me from Magical Melody. I appreciated how detailed and thorough the explanation on corn seeds was at first. I also love how this game tells you how much money you have as you're about to buy something, even if it does suck that they don't tell you how long crops take to grow. But then I realized that you can only buy seeds one at a time. You have to hold A through long, slow 3 text boxes, until you finally get the option to buy 1 seed. This is the worst way to handle in any of the series. Imagine trying to buy 99 seeds in this game. But since that's a waste of time, it is good that the game discourages you from doing that, I guess. I reset after I played all this day so I could have the time to ship the animal products before 5 PM and not waste all my money. I wouldn't have wasted all my money on corn seeds if I had any way of knowing that I didn't have the money for 99 corn seeds. The only villager I found really interesting was the one dressed in a purple witch costume with a crystal ball in front of her, so she seemed to be a pointless fortune teller. The X button switches tools. Since you can only have 2 tools in your bag, it's actually pretty useful. The B button is used as your run button. Holding it down conveniently makes you run ahead automatically, which is one of the best things about Harvest Moon. When you're first playing the game, it seems hard to remember whether the Y button is the tool button or the X button is, because they both seem equally likely for that role. Wouldn't it be better to just have you running every time you use the control pad, and have a walk button on R, and have the tool button be B or X? B makes more sense to me as a tool button because I associate B with the button used to swing your sword. I can put up with 4-directional movement. Although there is no excuse for it when you think about it, because A Link to the Past was on the Super Nintendo too, and it had 8-directional movement. And 8-directional movement is faster paced. It's better to have you only able to walk and do stuff in 4 directions than make it possible for you to do stuff in a direction you didn't intend. Pressing Z tells you what year and day of the month it is. I don't know why you can't just always have the time and date be on the screen. I'm sure the game could have handled having a map of your farm that you switch to by pressing start and select. But there isn't one. The level design in this game is good. Everything that you need is all close together in the farm. The seed shop is the first building you run into when you go to town. I only hate that the shops are so far apart from each other instead of all right beside the seed shop. The mine in the foraging area is an even longer stretch of cave where you do nothing, and then you reach the end and have to backtrack all the way out of there. It's interesting that you can find herbs in caves. Turnip and potato seeds cost the same amount of money, when you'd actually expect potato seeds to be more expensive because they take longer to grow, and that's how the later games do it. It turns out they're profitable enough to make up for taking 2 more days than turnips to grow, so you're supposed to plant nothing but potatoes. You go north of the crossroad to find a foraging forest just like in Harvest Moon 2, but it's vastly inferior. First off, the stamina meter is invisible in this game, so eating stuff isn't as satisfying because you have no way of knowing how useful that was to you. Second, there's no bag in this game. Because of that, you'd have to go all the way to this one thing repeatedly over the course of the day to make money off foraging to the fullest extent in a day. Not only is there not that much time in a day, but to get to that one green fruit, they have to go all the way to the east, and then north and west a little. So thankfully you can simply jump down from the ledge to the north of the exit. The forageable stuff are instantly respawnable. The foraging area is way too big with almost nothing to do. There's just a carpenter's shop there that looks cool and a fisherman. Confusingly, you can conveniently equip and use his fishing rod even if your rucksack is full of 2 tools. But you can only fish in the little pond by pressing Y on the leftmost dock of it, and then you have to press A to manually pick up the fish. And you're given the option to eat it or not eat it. Anytime that menu pops up, it wastes a bit of your time that could have not been wasted if eat was on a separate button. The game developers didn't have the foresight to just put a damn shipping bin right next to the fishing pond. So fishing is about as comparatively nerfed as foraging for the first game. To be fair, it is a farming game. It makes sense that you'd make most of your money off harvesting. It's great that you don't have to befriend the fisherman first before you can fish. All you have to do is talk to him. Unfortunately, it's possible to go an entire day without catching anything. So you have to be lucky. Pull in the reel after 5 seconds and recast if nothing bit yet. If the game did that automatically, that would be better. You need a guide to know this, but if you catch the first fish of the day and throw it back into the pond, you can get a power berry. You're only going to do this during the day. You can't make any money during the night, so it's not a big deal that you can only receive it during the day. The peddler only shows up on sunny Sundays in town, and there's a few things he'll actually pay more money for. The only things the peddler doesn't pay more for are the cave herb, tropical fruit, and fish, as well as the full moon berry. The only way you can get a clock is to get your house upgraded before spring ends. Otherwise it's lost forever, and you'd never be able to check to see what time it is from anywhere in the game. So that's weird. The sign next to the carpenter's shop tells you to call them, but you look everywhere in the game and you don't find a phone that you can call them with. It's great that removing weeds and picking up stones doesn't require any stamina. It's annoying having to ship stuff one at a time, going all the way back to the bin every time. The worst thing about harvesting this game, by far, is that you aren't paid for anything you ship after 5 PM. Well, since time freezes after 5 PM, it makes sense that they would do that for the sake of balance. You'd think time wouldn't freeze at all. The benefit to time freezing at night is that you have all the time in the world to clear your farm. You're never going to have enough time to take care of all of the farm. They didn't account for how fast time moved. The game never tells you that time does freeze at night, but it does lead to an awesome exploit. Only do the planting and watering during the night. When you plant seeds in the rain, you still need to water them. And you need to water tomato and corn after harvesting them no matter what. You'd think they would have fixed that in the beta testing. Something really awesome about this game is when you run out of stamina, you don't faint. You just can't use any tools. So you can just run over to the hot spring no problem. And something the game doesn't tell you is that you have to jump in and out of it 6 times to restore all of your stamina. It's not based on how long you go in there. The best thing about this game is easily the exploits. I don't even think it's overpowered because it's so far away from your farm. The game also has stuff that are a complete waste of money, like flowers, cake, and perfume. It's not like they increase the affection of the girls that much, so it's not worth buying them. It's especially bad with the perfume at the flower festival because it's so expensive, you'd think it wouldn't be a waste of money. I love that using the axe or sickle teleports the material to where it's stored. The foraging area has infinitely respawning stumps to cut, so that's awesome. You can't even buy animals on a rainy day. And it's so weird that you have to know to pick up a chicken that's just outside of the shop after you buy the chicken and bring it home to your farm. I wasn't paying enough attention to that area north of the shop, so I didn't notice that there was a chicken there, or if I did, I guess I thought I was always supposed to be there because it's an animal shop. Eggs from chickens disappear in one day if they're not collected. There isn't even a mayonnaise maker in this game. Wasn't that obvious as an idea? Like lighting up a bag to carry more than one item? But there is something to be said about the game being faster paced because you don't have to use makers. At least the coop isn't nearly as cramped as in the GBC game. I did have to tediously count every chicken and cow in order to know how much to feed them. But that's because I was coming back to this file after years and didn't have it memorized how much fodder I needed anymore. It would have been harder than it needed to be to count them if they would just stay still. On my Wii file, even by the second year, I didn't have 8 cows and chickens. There is no option for sheep. I don't actually care about that though. I only had a few cows, and most of the cows were calves. The game forces you to have enough grass planted before you're allowed to buy animals. I don't know why the game forces you to have enough grass planted, because you don't need nearly that much grass. You only need as much grass as the amount of animals you have, times the amount of days it takes for the grass to regrow. I never put them out to graze anyways because it takes forever. Here's something unintuitive about the game. Wild dogs only show up if you have a broken fence piece. And you can make sure you don't have any by throwing all the fence pieces in the water. But you need a guide to know that. The reason I have a cow in the first place is that a newly bought cow has to be a useless cow for no reason. In this game, you can have up to 12 cows instead of just 4 for each species like in the GBC game, which is good for making more money in a day and making up for the stunning fact that there's no cheese and butter makers in this game, but drags out ranching time longer than it has to be. I wasn't mad at having just 4 cows in the GBC game. It'd be better to have the milk and eggs give you more money. That'd be faster pacing. Ranching gets boring pretty quickly because it's so repetitive. At first I assumed the cows would stay still, because they mostly stay still in the GBC game. Nope, you still push them by accident when just trying to walk up to them to milk them. And that means you can't milk them while they're walking away from you. But at least you push them right up to their feeding stall and that stops them. And the barn is cramped with those feeding stalls. But they still end up going to the other stalls and confusing you about whether you tended to them already or not. Because you can't just see their names above them the whole time. If only each cow looked slightly different from the others because of their spots. I like that you can put feeds in the stalls from either the left side or right side of them. since the cows are usually blocking one of the sides. But be careful not to waste the feed by throwing it in the wrong place. You don't even have to feed the cows, and they never get sick. It's something you would need a guide to know. The biggest problem with ranching is the slowdown from having nearly maximum amount of cows. The point is, taking care of the cows is needlessly tedious because they won't just stay still. It's awesome that using the milker doesn't decrease stamina. If an animal isn't fed, which is going to happen because of typhoons, you have to feed them for 3 entire days until they actually start producing stuff again. Something shocking is that crops you planted in spring can still grow in the summer, and it's so easy not to know that. Why did they remove that in the next game? So the spring crops could still let you make money until the summer ones are ready. I learned that a day before a hurricane, none of the villagers have a personality because they all just talk about the fact that the hurricane is coming up. On the first playthrough, I married Eve by looking up a guide to raise her affection super high, super fast. Something that involved me hearing the opening notes of the bar music over and over again for hours. I was restarting its music over and over again, exiting and entering the room. It's because I talked to her and responded to her question over and over. This kind of thing applies to a lot of the bachelorettes in the game. I'm really glad there's a super easy way to get married, because this game doesn't have a bank. The lack of a bag is the biggest problem with the game. And time moves fast. So befriending anyone in this game is needlessly tedious and punishing. It's really lame that if you retrieve Anne's weathercock, the day ends. Not that you're warned about that. That's your punishment for getting them to 4 hearts. Nina's event sucks! The first time you try to get to her, you won't have a hammer with you. How are you supposed to know that you have to bring a hammer to get to her? So you'll have to go all the way back to your tool shed to get it. This applies to Eve's event too. Why can you only propose on Saturdays? Except for Nina where it's Sunday. You can propose at 5 hearts. But affection decreases by 2 every day if you're married. So that's sort of a trap. But every wife likes eggs, which more than make up for that. The only way you can find out the amount of hearts she has is by finding her diary. Something you're not warned about is that proposing ends the day. And you're also not told that talking to your wife doesn't raise her affection. I immediately noticed when I left my house that I had planted the crops in rows so I could water a square of crops around me with one use of the sprinkler, having more time available to water more crops in a day as a result. You know why the rows and not just squares that you jump between have grass planted in the middle of them so there wouldn't be a weed in the middle of them you can't jump onto? It's because this game doesn't let you jump over crops, or even over weeds and rocks. I don't like having to waste seeds. The sprinkler is awesome and overpowered. You never need to fill it up with water again, and you water everything in a little square around you with one tap of the button. The sprinkler only costs a few thousand G. All you have to do to get the sprinkler is wait until summer 20th. Something shocking is that fall might as well be winter. You can't grow any crops in either season. At least that spares you from having to run back and forth between crops for a while. It's easy to forget because it's so unintuitive. I'm glad the mushroom's so close to the entrance of the screen. You'd never know without a guide that poison mushrooms were the most profitable ones. It sucks that festivals end the day without warning you they will. One of them's a needlessly challenging luck-based egg hunt. Luck-based because you don't know where the egg's gonna be until you get there. And apparently you need to win the event in both years to get the best ending. How is anyone supposed to know that there's a special berry in the mountains only available on days 10 through 12 of fall? And that's a good idea to bring it to the Harvest Festival. It's too far away for you to know that it exists when it does exist. Good thing the game has the horse around for shipping. If he stayed still like the horse in the GBC version, he'd make an excellent moving shipping bin. The problem is he moves around, and he's not there from the start of the game. The horse can be useful, but for no reason he takes until the first winter to get, and you can't leave your farm with it. The Starry Night Festival sucks, because as soon as you wake up, you're forced to go to one of the locations you're told to go to. And the game assumes that you didn't get married until the second year for this. So your wife's not gonna tell you where she is. So you're gonna pick the wrong option. I love that you don't have to charge up the golden tools to use their skills. It's so much faster paced. Cake is supposed to be useful for giving you a bunch of happiness points for the best ending when you give birthday cake to your wife or kid. But apparently you can get to max happiness in minutes by just talking to someone on the last day of winter enough times. The idea of the happiness system is immersive. Earning happiness is easy even without that. Sometimes it's literally thrown at you because you get happiness points just from seeing the animals in the mountains. The best ending is still bullshit to get though, because if you ship 512 of the same crop, or get a total of 512 affection points with the girls, your score resets to 0. It'll punish you for growing 57 of the same type of seed. You're punished for being too good at the game. Power berries are also required for the best ending. You never think to sell a chicken in the fall specifically to get a power berry. And the other unintuitive one in the game is gone by hammering the chicken statue at the crossroad. How are you supposed to know you can break it? You can never break man-made stuff in these games. And you don't always get the berry from doing that. So why would you do it again then? What's also awesome is you can pick up your dog and put him down 100 times in one day and have it count, apparently. Which is good because you need to hug the dog 100 times for the best ending. Not that you know that. And that's actually the only thing the dog is useful for. So bottom line, Harvest Moon Super Nintendo has some awesome exploits, but it's overall inferior to the GBC version. I know the GBC version is considered watered down, but it letting you just warp to any shop with no time passing once you left your farm was much easier, faster, and more convenient than having to walk around an actual town. And it was also much faster that you could buy as many seeds as you wanted in one go instead of one at a time. And I preferred the underground mine in the GBC version because it had 2 mushrooms for you to quickly ship in a bin that was right there. Time doesn't even pass when you're foraging in that game. And I like not spending even more time ranching anyways. 16 cows is so tedious to deal with. The cows move around less in the GBC version, so the ranching is better. And I know that the typhoons damage your grass in the Super Nintendo version and they don't in the GBC version. Because all the grass in my best save file is perfectly fine. The biggest problem with this game is the lack of a bag to keep gifts in. I think the infinite night makes up for it though. It's inconvenient to try to befriend people anyways, so it's not that big of a loss that you can't do it in the 8-bit game. About the only thing I can say that makes this game a bit better, that isn't something superficial, is that the tool upgrade system is the most convenient and intuitive it has ever been in a Harvest Moon game. You just buy them, and you can get them for free, which is very generous. And I like that you can fish without having to bend over backwards to get the fishing rod really late in the game. The hot spring in the GBC version is right below your farm, and time is frozen all the way up to the hot spring. The hot spring is more intuitive in this game because you could restore the same amount of stamina by staying in it for hours outside. In the GBC game, because time doesn't move indoors, you're gonna waste your time staying in it for a long time at first. But it requires more time and effort to get to for filling your stamina in this game. Even though you eat food automatically every mealtime, it restores a little stamina in both games, but not nearly enough to matter. Basically, the GBC version is better because it's faster paced and therefore more streamlined, removing the time-wasting town and boring befriending aspect. and being purely dedicated to ranching and farming, with even the foraging being at the best it's ever been. It's Harvest Moon in its purest, simplest form, no frustrating convolutions. This game is close to that, but it could have done without the town and all those cows. The other major problem in the game is having to re-water crops in the rain.